Good evening. I call this meeting of the Westborough School Committee to order. The time is 6 p.m. The meeting is recorded live on Westborough TV. All those who can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the first item on our agenda is the public hearing for the FY27 school choice program.
Turn it to me.
Allison will give us an introduction to this.
I'm just, this is kind of for the viewing public. Just, I know the school committee has been through this a number of times, but just as a review for folks. Let me pull this up.
So let me open the public hearing first.
Okay, go ahead.
I now declare this public hearing on inter-district school choice officially open. This hearing is held in accordance with General Law, Chapter 76, Section 12B, to provide the public an opportunity to comment on the district's participation in the school choice program for the upcoming school year. We welcome your input before the committee moves to a discussion and potential vote.
Okay. For folks out there and folks here, just a quick overview of how the inter-district school choice program works in the state of Massachusetts, and this is all based on Massachusetts state law. It is actually, interestingly, a program that is the default. So by law, unless you opt out, you're automatically a school choice district. And that's really important to note. The notion is that all Massachusetts districts, unless they opt out, are able to take students from outside the municipality. Many, and I don't actually know the percentage, but many districts do decide to opt out of this, often because of space limitations and things like that. So there's this presumption of participation. There's some requirements to withdraw, which is why the vote is before you this evening. And that vote comes along with a formal resolution that we submit to the state indicating we're withdrawing and the reason for it. A couple key rules for districts related to the school choice. One is that if you ever do choose to participate in school choice, it's completely a non-discrimination based system. There's no selection of students. It's any students who want to apply. And if there are more students interested than there are seats, it's on a lottery basis. Transportation is not provided under school choice. That's up to parents unless students have transportation as a provision of an IEP. The funding structure is really key, and one of the reasons that many districts choose to opt out is that funding that comes along with a student is $5,000 for most students. If a student has an ed plan, there may be additional funds that come, but it's based on the very specific provisions on the IEP. There's sort of a formula based on that. And that funding is taken out of the Chapter 70 allocation from the sending district and comes to our town's disbursement and then has to be transferred from the town into a revolving account is sort of the mechanics of how it works financially. And that's kind of it. That's sort of my broad strokes overview of what school choice is and how it works, in case folks had questions out there.
So is there anybody here who'd like to speak? I presume not. Okay. So we're gonna have the motion. Do I have a motion?
I'll make it.
Here's the text.
Yeah, I have it.
You have it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Whereas the Educational Reform Act of 1993 requires that the enrollment of non-resident students under the school choice provision, unless the committee votes by June 1st not to participate, and whereas the school choice provision reallocates funds from resending, sorry about that. Whereas the school choice provision reallocates funds from the sending district and awards such funds to the receiving district, and whereas the maximum reimbursement allowed by the school choice provision is less than Westborough's per pupil expenditure, which means Westborough Public Schools should be required to subsidize each choice student. And whereas once Westborough accepts a choice student, Westborough must keep each student through graduation regardless of whether Westborough's demographic situation has changed. And whereas it's likely that a number of students will return to their sending districts or otherwise leave Westborough, thus creating a potential income loss, now hereby it be resolved that the Westborough School Committee respectfully declines to participate in the school choice program, provided, however, that if surrounding school districts subsequently and prior to June 1st decide to accept the provisions of school choice, the Westborough School Committee reserves the right to do likewise in order to protect its fiduciary interests in this matter. So accordingly, I move to opt out of school choice for the Westborough School Committee.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, I didn't officially close the public hearing. Let me just speak that one sentence. If there are no further comments from the public, I declare this public hearing closed. The committee will now take up the scheduled vote. Is there discussion? Okay, although in favor, and just to be clear, the yes vote means that we do not participate in the school choice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 500, the motion passes. We're moving to the next item, the superintendent's update.
Great. I have, it looks like three things. It's actually two things. The first is just I wanted to let you know that kind of going forward, we are going to include on the agenda as a regularly occurring item, financial update. So Anita is out today. She'll be back back in district after the break. She's out recovering from a medical thing, and so as soon as she's back, she'll start doing those on a regular basis. So I'm excited to see that part of the agenda. So the other pieces in the report tonight are John Green is here for a technology update, followed shortly by Matt, who's going to do an update, sort of dialing into artificial intelligence and where we are with our work in that in the district. So thank you.
Good evening, thank you. And wait for the slides to come up.
Yeah.
Got a lot of slides and not a lot of time, so I'm going to skip a bunch of them and give you some overviews when appropriate. All right, I am John Green, Director of Technology. Did I point this? See, I had technology, I know this before.
Yeah.
Point to yours.
Is it my
My trainer.
if you wanted angle a little bit. All right. You know what, if you want to just let me know and I'll advance for you. All right, there we go. Next.
Thank you. All right, just a brief overview of the presentation. Go ahead. So basically, the technology department, we work on operations and also empower students and teachers in the course of their learning. So one of the main opportunities we have is Universal Design for Learning, supported by technology. UDL is a framework for instruction and instructional materials that works to leverage the aspects of human cognition and motivation, and as such is a good opportunity for technology to provide multiple means of expression and action, multiple means of representation, and then choice and autonomy for multiple means of engagement. So these are the principles and the rules and the guidelines we use when we design educational experiences using technology. So as such, our guidelines include things like student use of technology should be active, learning and aligned with learning goals, and appropriately supervised. So reading or watching a video story is not a substitute for book reading. We really focus on learning and doing, not entertaining and watching. So in our sense, our screen time in our classroom is not like screen time at home. It's not like screen time during recreational time. It's not, scrolling social media. It's really focused on learning and doing appropriately. Thanks. So it's sort of a quick view of who has what when, the progression of technology from pre-K through 12. So in pre-K, we have classroom iPads that students use when under the supervision of their teachers. K3, each student has an iPad for their use, stays at school. Teachers supervise their use and set that up. 4 through 6, similarly, however, in 5th grade and 6th grade, the iPads do go home with the students from time to time to support their learning at home. And 7 through 9, we have Chromebooks for students that go home with them. And 10 through 12, students use personal devices. In the event that they have a financial hardship or need, then we provide a Chromebook for their use that way. So the progression and the philosophy behind it is students get exposed to a variety of platforms, a variety of tools, and by the time they're reaching 10th grade, they're able to choose which tools work well for them and choose accordingly and really choose the tools that are optimized for how they learn and how they're working. So we put in safeguards for our students because it's internet can be an interesting and dangerous place. So safeguards include specifically YouTube videos and Google Safe Search. So we work to enforce the safe search for there and on Google searching, and also to restrict YouTube access on school campus on our network. And so in order to retain the good parts of YouTube, because there are a few good things out there, for teachers in their classroom, videos that get embedded in Google Classroom or Google Slides can be viewed by students on the network without seeing the ads, without seeing the recommendations, without seeing the comments, without seeing all the stuff that makes YouTube such an interesting place. And when off the school network, similarly, YouTube videos restricted, and also blocking adult content on iPads and Chromebooks when they're off network. We do that on network as well. We use category-based content filtering, and then have a do that limiting at home as well. And also student data privacy. When we share our student data with vendors, we share only the minimum required. So for example, when we create Google accounts, it's their first name, last name, and year of graduation. That's the only information that we share. We choose vendors that have strong data privacy agreements. And we also recently joined the Tech Student Data Privacy Alliance, which is an alliance of districts around the state and around the country that are advocating for student data privacy, and also working with to negotiate agreements, common agreements with vendors, and really give us some leverage in the market. Our technology benefits operations too, as well as education and learning. So our school leaders, our teachers, our non-instructional staff, everybody is more productive with our collaboration tools. We also use technology to streamline and automate workflows, back office workflows, and by reducing paperwork with online forms and making things with the workflows in the back office more efficient. So our department, we have 17 FTEs. The first column is the school. The second column is the school year plus. So these people do not work, these positions do not work full time. And you'll notice that for the fail school, our computer support technician it's a school year plus, where everyone else is a full year. That's a legacy contract issue, and fails being a smaller school, it's not a big deal. In the summertime, we're able to cover that. So that's who we are and where we work. And here's a collection of things that we work on. These are some of the physical things that we work on. Lots of physical stuff. And some of the services and software and virtual stuff we support. A lot of that too. And these are our budget trends for the last 7 years. So as you can see, it sort of kind of goes up and down, ebbs and flows. The 2024 and 2025 were years where we replaced more teacher laptops than previous years, hence the spike there in the hardware line on those in those years. Basically, we have those on a 5-year replacement cycle, and you'll see that every 4th or 5th year, you'll get that spike there. The rest of the categories remain fairly consistent, with some ebbs and flows here and there depending on what's going on for that year. And some examples of what's in those categories. The hardware category, supplies and repairs, software, maintenance and support. That's how we break those out for that chart. And just another way to look at it, the total, the share of each category for the total budget. So you can see hardware is pretty consistently above 50%. And then the other ones tend to oscillate as they do compared to other ones, as the budget itself grows and shrinks, and as the needs for the year change for different categories. So some of the budget pressures we're seeing software vendors pressing for annual price increases of 5% or more. And that's been going on for a couple of years. We've been pushing back and have had some successes pushing back. And new in the last couple of years, new models of laptops and tablets are frequently being introduced at higher price than their predecessors. For a while, you were pretty consistently flat. Price would be the same, new features, new models. Now we're seeing price increases on those. Some of our accomplishments from FY25, we replaced aging Wi-Fi and an end-of-life Wi-Fi at Mill Pond and Fails, and got a 40% E-rate reimbursement for that. We replaced our end-of-life PA system at Hastings, and we're in the process of replacing aging classroom projectors with touch panels. And for this year, our initiatives and projects: installing security cameras at Armstrong, more projector replacements, completing compliance with the MLTS regulations, so that's the multi-line telephone systems. That requires that any 911 call from any space with multi-line telephones, like a school building or office, that you can pick up the phone and dial 911 and reach dispatch, and then when dispatch gets the readout, they see the street address, the building name, the floor, and the room number, and also get a callback number that can dial that number back directly. So that's a big change from how the old, shared line centric systems used to work. We're also working on improving security, incident response planning, and looking at evaluation of virtualization environments. And looking at FY27, we're planning to finish our building out security cameras at Hastings, more aging projector replacements, formalizing our data governance, and migrating to a different virtualization environment if that is an advantage to us. So the FY27 budget is being driven by hardware and supplies and repairs and software. So we're seeing, again, prices rising in those areas. And also we're looking at some new tools for security. And looking ahead beyond that, it's just going to depend on general inflation levels and then demand levels specifically for CPUs and memory components. Data centers needs have been driving those prices up. And so we've got a bunch of things to do this summer to get ready for next year. And I think now ready to take your questions.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Let's see, we have any questions? Steve?
No, very good, John. Thank you.
Jane?
Yeah, no questions. Thanks for the update.
Tim?
Sure. Thank you for the presentation, John. As you're going through, I am curious, we were talking about how we're currently working on installing cameras in Armstrong and that there's going to be a project in the future for Hastings. Is this going to be something happening at all the schools? Like, were those two just particularly bad? Just curious, what the state of the security cameras are, throughout Westborough public schools in general.
Yeah, certainly. So these are the last schools to be getting these cameras. So Hastings got some cameras during the preschool construction project and renovation in Hastings, and so we're just going to build out the rest of those cameras to match the rest of the schools. The goal is to get a view of the perimeter of the buildings and then be able to see people as they come and enter the entrances and then see where they go in the hallway. So these are not cameras in instructional spaces or classrooms. They're in public spaces, so like cafeteria, gym, and then hallways. So the idea is that they are for security and protection of the occupants and of the property.
Yeah. And just one other question. The progression of technology, talking about the different grades where people get different things. This might be a question for you, Allison. I'm not sure. Is that a policy do you have any sense of how long that's been in place and who sets that policy? Is that the superintendent or is that your department?
Yes. So this was put in place when we rolled out one-to-one. So that was the previous superintendent and myself, and the assistant superintendent as well. So this is kind of the idea and the vision for the technology at that time.
I think, the kind of models like this are the sort of thing that's subject to periodic review, kind of as the universe changes, as technology changes, and especially as some of the devices, sets of devices come on offline and need to be replaced. It's an opportunity every time that happens for us to sort of reassess, reevaluate, talk with educators about what they need and see what's out there and available and sustainably affordable. That's a big piece. So.
Yeah. Which certainly makes sense, and I do not have like any proposal at this time in terms of changing. I just know that obviously there's been a conversation around like cell phones in schools and just different technology, and so I was just curious when the last time that we did review something like this was. But
I think
thank you.
my understanding that was sort of right around the time of the pandemic, right? The one-to-one happened.
Yeah, it was a few years before the pandemic.
A few years, so 2017 or 2018, right?
Yeah, I think I started in 2014, so we started 2015, 16,
Okay.
kind of building that up.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very good. I just had a couple of questions that actually I don't, well, one is, do you know, you may not know the answer to this, so don't feel compelled to come up with something if you don't know. I'm just curious. How do we fare in comparison to other towns as far as our technology budget is concerned, and then our focus on technology in the classroom with the one-to-one? Do you know around with surrounding towns, are they all doing this type of thing, or have they shifted away from it, or what's the going?
So my observations of the message that fly on the tech director's listserv is that most of the surrounding districts are one-to-one. And I've not heard any plans for any of them to change that, move away from that, at least not from the tech director's perspective. I don't know if you've heard anything different from superintendents.
No, I haven't either. And I think one-to-one looks a little different in different places depending on the devices involved. So they're just sort of different permutations, especially, I think at the high school level, there are places that are one-to-one where there's a district issued device all the way through, but there are quite a few that have a bring your own device where there's more choice, like we do. And both those, there are advantages and disadvantages to either choice. The same thing goes with the devices for younger children. We have iPads. Other districts start using Chromebooks earlier. For example, especially once the touchscreen Chromebooks came out, those became kind of popular in some places too. I think we've talked a little bit about it, and cost-wise, there's not a huge difference between those at this point in time. So.
Right. And then just a follow-up to sort of what Tim was talking about, I was curious if there was what the thought process behind, so we give Chromebooks till 9th grade, so it's the first year of high school that we're giving it. Is it just because for transitional purposes that we want them to continue with that, and then they go out and get their own for 10th grade? I always found that an interesting and odd sort of transition, because I'm like, both of my girls have been through it, and I'm like, and I'm debating because they're going to be going to college, so you got to get them one then, and then I almost feel like it would have been a nice progression had I just gotten it right after middle school. They would have used it for those 4 years. But I'm just curious if there's any thought process behind that. Is it more like a transitional adjustment type of thing?
Yeah, that was the rationale for that, is that going from 8th to 9th has enough changes. And this, having another year of the Chromebook, means that another year of, I guess, 1 year delayed, 1 year the family can delay buying a laptop or buying something for their student.
Yeah.
Because certainly buying something for 9th grader was much less likely to be helpful after graduation than something bought a little later.
True. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, John, for your presentation. I just have a few questions. I'm curious about the staffing on that one slide where you show how many computer support technicians we have in the district. And I'm just curious, why is there a difference for Fales as opposed to, compared to the other schools? Fales doesn't have a full year computer support technician while the other ones do?
Yeah, so that's a legacy contract. That's someone who's been around for a long time, and their contract is a school year plus contract. It doesn't actually impact the support that teachers and students get during the school year, because they're there during the school year. It just means that we don't have the benefit of their labor during the summertime.
Okay, thank you. And another question I had was, you mentioned on the slides the Tech Student Data Privacy Alliance. Could you speak to that, what it is?
Yeah, so it's a Tech is the education cooperative, And they provide many education services, and one of them is legal services for negotiating student data privacy agreements and consulting with districts on student data privacy agreements and having pre-negotiated ones. So we can go to the Tech Alliance, Student Data Privacy Alliance website and search on vendors, search on products, and see their pre-negotiated agreements, and then we can execute those agreements for our district.
I'd say it saves on legal fees substantially. We can pay a sort of small membership fee to the Alliance and get in on all their kind of legal work that they've done to do that negotiation up front. So we're not having to go out and do that negotiation ourselves each time with a vendor. And also, as John mentioned before, there's a little bit of power of persuasion when you get, I think something like half the districts in the state now, and then districts outside of Massachusetts have joined this alliance. And that allows us to put pressure on some of the companies that have been slow to adopt the kind of data privacy measures that we think are really important for kids. So I think that's I think one of the biggest advantages of banding together. It's a collective action to try and make things better.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And just have one more comment, not the question, just a comment. With the AI being where it is today, I think cybersecurity is going to be a growing concern. So I'm glad to know that we have proper device management in place, and all the updates are going to be happening as soon as possible, because it's a growing threat for software, and we're relying on software more and more. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. I think kind of that's sort of the all the structural and background part, and I think Matt's going to talk a little bit about sort of the educational piece of this that we've been grappling with all year here. And,
Good, great. You're just going to zoom in.
okay. Do that.
That's good.
I just
Scroll down. Yeah, that,
Okay.
that works.
Okay.
Well, yeah, thank you and good evening. As Allison said, I'm going to highlight some aspects of the Artificial Intelligence Committee, our kind of collaborative work that we've been doing, and focusing specifically on our roadmap and our AI implementation plan. I think before I start, it's really important to frame what the roadmap and implementation plan is and what it is not. So it's very fluid. It's a multi-year framework designed to integrate generative AI as a partner to, rather than a replacement for human learning, to augment both for the benefit of teachers and educators, but also for students and student learning.
It's kind of wonky.
Yeah, it is a little wonky. Yeah, thank you.
I'll keep working on it
Oh,
while you talk. How about?
So one aspect I want to highlight is that this presentation actually was created with the assistance of AI, and I'm modeling what we would like to see in our students. So attributing your sources and attributing AI use is one of the components of the implementation plan. So this particular slide deck was enabled by Notebook LM. You can see in the bottom right corner, there's a little logo there. I also use Gemini as kind of a large language model to help with the memo, as well as with some of the content that you'll see. Before I jump into it, I do think it's important for the school committee to be aware, but also folks at home, if they're looking at or watching this later, what exactly generative AI means. So just to define the key term, it's defined as a class of machine learning trained to create new data, such as text, images, videos, and code, which resemble the data that they were trained on. Unlike traditional predictive AI, which is trained just to make classifications or predictions, generative AI generates new content. So it's creating content. And that's a definition, working definition from MIT. And it's helpful to consider AI when you think about it, generative AI, as being reactive to human inputs and human prompts. So we'll ask generative AI to do things, you give it a prompt, it comes up with a response. or an output. But if you don't ask it to do anything, it's not going to do anything. It sits there and waits. It sits idle. So with that in mind, one thing that I want to highlight also is the process by which we created this AI implementation plan. It is really the product of input from a whole wide variety of stakeholders. So the AI committee, which is a district level committee that goes back over a year. In the membership of the AI committee, it's composed of administrators, tech department, department heads, teachers. I would say it's probably the membership is heavily skewed towards the secondary level, but we do have representation from Mill Pond and elementary schools as well on the AI committee. Out of that, we also had a small AI working group subcommittee who was tasked with developing the first draft of this AI implementation plan. And that was 7 WPS teachers, educators, administrators who went to a COSIN conference, and that was in late January of the winter. And we worked collaboratively together and were informed by the COSIN organization. And it was a room full of, I want to say 50 other districts that are all in the same position we're in. And we were tasked with creating the first draft of this implementation plan. And finally, I want to thank members of the Westborough Ed Tech Fund, Technology Fund, the WETF. They also reviewed the plan and gave feedback as well. So it's been an iterative process. So in terms of the pillars, the plan is largely broken down into 4 main buckets. AI governance, curriculum, student use or literacy of AI, building educator capacity, so professional development, and then the community and family engagement piece. So one part of the governance and policy and data privacy component that comes up very frequently is concerns about student data and students misusing data or being targeted with ads. And one thing that our tech department focused in on is making sure that all tools that we're providing to students for use are compliant with FERPA and COPA. And that speaks to the tech collaborative that we just previously mentioned. So I'll give you an example. At the start of the school year, we learned that ChatGPT was in use by some students. We then turned it off. We updated our by turning it off, I mean, we updated our firewall, and now it is no longer accessible on any of those student devices that John previously shared. What we did pivot to, though, is Notebook LM as well as Gemini, and both of those are educational. John, you can feel free to chime in here, but they're educational specific models of the LLMs. Is that correct?
Yes, so they're provided under our Google Workspace for Education agreement as core services, so they're guaranteed to be COPPA and FERPA compliant by Google.
Yeah, so thank you. So the data that students are putting in there and using, it's not going out to the web. I actually double checked that right before we started. The other component of our plan is this notion of a humanity guardrail. And if you don't mind advancing to the next slide. Thank you. So one thing that we felt, and it was kind of a through line throughout the AI committee and as well as the working group, was really to focus in on positioning AI as a tool to the user, and that's being driven by human oversight and not the other way around. We wanted to focus on preserving the human element of teaching and learning, which is very kind of relationship driven, and you get to know your students and the students have a relationship with the teacher versus just kind of product oriented outputs and kind of that process base where it's more transactional. So those conversations have been the philosophical underpinnings of our AI committee for at least the last year, and it's gone back and forth. So part of this, when we developed the AI plan, was to really think about where it's appropriate, when it's time and place. And we came up with the idea of preserving the pre-K through 3 experience to be purely analog. no AI for student use whatsoever. Then starting in grades 4, really focusing at the Mill Pond space as kind of the guided introduction. So we're building student literacy about AI, topics of bias, hallucinations, ethical concerns, but also weaving in, and it'll come up on the next slide, some of the social emotional concerns that we see, especially in reported in the media about misuse and harm. And then focusing on the secondary level, more advanced applications, department-specific tools. This would be like kind of the leading edge here that we would build towards in the future. A central component of the AI plan is building educator capacity. So we need to create a multi-year PD plan. This is something that was very clear. We actually surveyed all of our educators just last week, actually, and asked their feedback on how some of the professional development we provided this year specific to AI, how that went, what their needs are, what worked, and just kind of what their thoughts are. And you can see some of the themes that emerge here. We need to do more small group PD specific to tools. One thing I will share is pre-K through 3 educators really will benefit from having an introduction to AI. So far this school year, we've really focused on the grade 4 through 12 educator band. We provided some choice-based AI training for our elementary and WEC teachers, but that was an opt-in model. It wasn't like universal. So that's one area that we know we can focus in on in the years to come. Another topic that has emerged is clear expectations about academic integrity. And I do want to say that when AI was introduced, it has been very disruptive. Teachers can view this purely from a lens of cheating and plagiarism. And I think broadening that view and looking at AI use in the classroom, but then also outside of the classroom through like administrative tasks, I think taking a much larger view of AI will be helpful. But we also do see the need to focus on authentic assessments and then finding the correct time and place for using AI. And then the other thing that we are exploring would be embedded continuous support in the classroom. And this would be a multi-year approach, probably 2 to 3 years out. And one thing I would look to do would be to explore AI coaching to help teachers develop the capacity in the classroom. I want to highlight this AI student use matrix. This was a product of our AI committee over the summer of last year to really set clear boundaries of academic integrity. As you can see at the center of this is student use relies on teacher agency. So teachers would continue in the plan to have complete agency over when and where and under what situations and context AI could be leveraged for student use. And again, that would be at the secondary level. Yep, thank you. I referenced this earlier, and this is the concern that has been emerging about social emotional wellness. So in addition to teaching students how AI works, as well as all of the ethical and hallucination and bias concerns and environmental concerns that can go into using an LLM. One thing that we're mindful of and concerned about are the psychological risks, emotional dependencies, and the dangers of like companionship and personas that can emerge because AI models tend to function in an echo chamber and will just tell you what you want to hear, and that can lead to some really concerning outcomes. So I have been working with Roger Anderson about looking at looking at our health curriculum and weaving in some lessons to teach students about some of these risks. I feel like that's an appropriate place for it to lie in our curriculum, as we do with other risky behaviors, so that students know what they're engaging in. And on this final slide, you can see this is a kind of deliberate long-term phased rollout. It has the dates 2025 to 2028. Consider all these AI plans as a draft, because things can and will change, but you can see in the initial component, we've really focused on the foundation, the safety, the data component, the governance piece, the procurement of various AI apps, making sure that they're safe, transitioning into capacity building, which is where we're at right now. I can see us really needing to lift educator capacity and then teach students, and then weaving it into the curriculum thoughtfully and in a structured way so that students will, as they matriculate through Westborough Public Schools, really learn about AI as it's changing and evolving. And then as it matures, I can see some frontier use cases growing, specifically around agentic AI, and that would be different than generative AI, and that's where AI is more automated, and it goes out and it completes a task independent of the user. So the example I'll give you is if you wanted to go to Gemini and say, create me an itinerary to go on vacation to the Bahamas for 7 days, it'll do that. And it'll do it quite well. It'll give you recommendations for hotel rooms and sites to see and maybe even airfare. But under agentic AI, you can, and this is kind of a component that I would really want to be thoughtful of, especially around student use, but also institutional use. You could have agentic AI go out and research that and now go ahead and book me some things. You can give access to it to engage in real time, to make flight reservations, to make dinner reservations at restaurants. So there's some workflows and processes that are that can be automated through agentic AI that we want to be very thoughtful and fearful and skeptical of for use in Westborough, I'd say. Now, the final slides really delve into the actual AI implementation plan. And I feel like probably the best way to address this would be to answer questions you have, but I want to frame it by saying we started this whole process of developing these plans based on our mission statement, our core values, and then out of that, creating the why. Why do we want to integrate AI here in Westborough? And as we know, students will be leaving us and going on to many different opportunities, whether it's, post-secondary, colleges, or right into the workforce. But AI is not going away, and we want to prepare students so that they're successful for whatever the future may bring. And we want to do it with deliberate intent, and ensure that the human connection remains the cornerstone of our educational experience. So once we created this vision for AI, out of it, we then broke it down into those 4 pillars with sub goals for each. And I would say our next step is to then put it into operation, and we put some benchmarks there, timelines really are a better way to say it, not benchmarks, about when we would anticipate that some of these tasks would start and if they're completed. I imagine we'll be adding components on, taking some components off, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of them and open it up for questions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Steve?
Well, I think one of the things I saw this morning on the news was that AI in industry apparently is predicted to reduce the workforce by 6 or 7%. At this level in high school. I think it's important that at a certain age, at least, that discussion has got to be had. What do you do if the computer took over what it is you trained for? And therefore, how do you find a job in parallel, I guess, to the strengths and power of AI in industry? Our target in our school system while I've been here, and I guess, generations before us, was to learn something that would carry you through your life. We've done such a good job learning that we may be putting our own kids out of business. So somehow or another, I think that has to be woven into the program so that kids don't just give up, that in fact we drive them to do more than we did in our generation to keep the ability to feed their kids. So, I mean, that's one of the scary things about that. And of course, we've seen that, I think, is the initial reaction to what teachers thought, if you will, of AI, which is it potentially was a way for kids not to have to learn, right? So anyway, our work, your work, is cut out for you. We just watch what happens from day to day, pretty much. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
One thing I'd say that's kind of a happy coincidence is we're in the process, we have this MyCap committee, and kind of a parallel thing that's happening in the district is talking about kind of formalizing our career exploration work with kids and starting earlier. And I actually think those conversations, getting kids used to thinking about that, thinking about what's in the future, what are the things happening right now that are going to impact what's available in the future, can kind of help steer them toward things that will exist. By providing kind of an education about what this is and how it works, I think we position students to be people who are actually sort of shaping it as opposed to just reacting to it. So I appreciate that these things are going on at the same time, and Matt's been kind of on top of both of them. So.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thank you so much for the update. And every time you come and give an update on this, I say this is such a Herculean effort. So thank you and the committee for taking it on. I 100% agree with Steve, and I think that weaving education on how we use AI in the classroom and in our, the work that the kids are doing every day and the teachers are doing is what will help them know and learn how to not have it take over their jobs, but like that they can use it as part of their jobs to make them more efficient. So just a couple of questions. So what's it called? The student use agreement, are they signing that now? Or I know you attached it here and we've reviewed it. Is that something that the students are signing?
So I believe this was provided to high school students at the start of the year. I don't know if it was signed and returned. I don't know about that next component, but I do know it was provided to all the students.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm like a broken record with this, but if they don't know what they're not supposed to do, if they don't know the expectations, it's hard for them to follow them. And the expectation may be no AI use, which is totally okay as long as they know that. And actually maybe Jerry can.
I was just going to add that I did, yes. So the vice principals and the school administration sent out an email to every single Westborough high school student, and there was this Google form that you had to fill out. I forgot what its title is exactly, but it was something about like AI use, responsible AI use, and basically all students had to look through this new policy that the school is implementing, and policy is about protecting students and making sure that they understand when they can use AI in the classroom and when they can't, and setting some guidelines and boundaries. And I'm pretty sure that every single student had to sign it.
Yep.
And school administration followed up if the students didn't fill out that form.
The other piece, and it kind of parallels that, I think it's the third bullet on our action step, is updating our handbooks. Not only student use and plagiarism, but there's potential here for some serious misuse of deep fakes and videos and cyberbullying. So working with our administrators at the building level to update the handbooks so that they're reflective of, anti-discriminatory practices and anti-bullying. I think that's something that we'll put into practice.
Yeah, that's really important and helpful for the students. I love that you're doing some health education around this, because I think that's and I hope that our students will go beyond thinking it's just for like creating a paper. Even vacation planning, is a good use. But there are all these other components of AI, so it's great that it's being woven into health too. One one shift that I've seen that I think is concerning with our reaction to AI is the lack of in-class writing. I mean, I'm sorry, out-of-class writing. So much of our writing has been shifted to in-class. And I think there are a lot of reasons that I'm concerned about that. One is inequities for students that work at different paces, including those who get extra time, and where do they use, how can they make use of that extra time? But even just kids that might want to take longer with an assignment. And I would hate to see us lower our standards for what we expect in as far as writing quality, because we're doing it in a timed, timed situation exclusively. So I understand the need to assess authentic thought, but I really hope that we can find ways to do that and allow the students to get experience writing out of class, because at the next stage, they will have to do that, many of them. And I do think there is a huge cost to not having them write in the classroom. Out of the classroom. So
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I think being thoughtful about taking our AI guidelines and bringing them to a departmental and school base would be our next step. Like, what does this mean for, composition and literacy, persuasive writing, putting components into the directions about attributing sources, when, time, and place. Teachers should have agency, but I think being very explicit with students about, this is a good use of AI. Oh, but here's a really bad case of using AI, and this is why I think it's bad. I think that's some of the research that we've seen, and the guidance from COSIN was just being very deliberate when you use AI to model it with students so that they can observe it and witness it and agree.
Yeah, and in some cases, it's okay to have an assignment. I mean, many assignments will have no AI use tolerated, and that's totally fine. But at least being able to do some of that out of the classroom is what they'll be expected to do. And then the last thing I was wondering is, have we looked into purchasing, and maybe John, you have looked into these opportunities, like some sort of a system that is specific to K through 12 schools, that is an internal, it's like a closed loop, so it's not going out, we're not putting anything out, but that we purchase, that everyone would.
So I'm unaware of a purchase. We probably, the closest approximation would be Notebook LM. And I think, as John said, the Notebook LM, you can upload your sources. So if you're an English teacher and you have a PDF of a writing assignment, you can put that in there. You can put in websites that you only want the students, or that you want the AI model to then draft off of. And in that way, the teacher and the student then has control over the sources that the model is pulling from. It is different than the consumer model or consumer brand of Notebook LM. But I am not aware of school districts like creating their own.
Yeah, I'm just think it might be worth
Yeah.
looking into, because I think they come with training and with resources for, all different class types. It may not be something we would be interested in, but I was just wondering if the committee had looked into that at all.
I don't think we're aware of any that currently exist. What we do see across the market right now is our software or cloud-based computing platforms that we subscribe to are now having AI embedded into it. So I don't see brand new, like, buy a Westborough LLM for us, but I do see our, the data management for, we have a data analysis tool, and they just are launching a new AI component so that you can put in questions and it'll sift through massive data to give you kind of the visualization or the analysis that you're looking for.
Great, thank you.
No, thank you.
Tim? Sure.
So thank you for the presentation. My first question is, I was curious, I know that you were talking about kind of the different buckets that we would be putting kids into regarding like how we're teaching AI. Could you just speak at all to some of the thought process behind starting in grade 4 specifically?
Yeah, so thank you. The thought process behind it was relatively simple. Peter, our Mill Pond teacher, attended the COSIN conference. We looked at some of the appropriate time. There's some legal use cases for using LLM models. And we felt like it was important to teach students before they might encounter it in schools. And we wanted to really preserve pre-K through 3. We know all the students are going, all roads lead to Mill Pond. So starting in 4th grade in health classes, teaching students about AI before they actually use it so that then they become aware, and then starting and looking, this is frankly the work to do. We haven't done it. But then embedding in our curriculum the direct instruction about how to use it, not what it is or how it functions and what's the ethical and environmental component. But those conversations Peter and I and the committee had, and then we broadened it to the entire AI committee. And I can see us focusing some of our summer curriculum writing work on this very topic so that hopefully next year we can start teaching our 4th and 5th graders about AI.
I will say that one thing that kind of informed, I think, thinking as well is when we asked students, high school students, about AI use, they basically said, you should not worry so much about us. It's the little kids. Like they're messing around with it and they don't understand what it is, was kind of the message. I remember hearing from Jerry and company when they came last summer to meet with our committee. And I think we heard that loud and clear. At that point, I think the group was a little surprised by that, but it makes sense. You know, kids are, when new technology comes out, they're often the first people to be in there seeing what it can do, you know? Yeah.
Sarah?
Or,
Oh, sorry,
more, sorry.
still
Yeah. Just 2 more questions. Sorry. And you got a little bit ahead of me actually, because my next question was about the district summit, the COSIN summit, and so would be very curious. Like, it sounds like there were some good takeaways, but you know, it sounds like that's already happened. Just like, would be curious if you could speak a little bit to you know, anything that was learned there.
Yeah, so it was a large conference. Fortunately, it was just down the road in Natick. It's a national organization. John, you've taken workshops through COSIN before. It was a 2-day workshop. As I said, I got a cross sample of people that were interested in participating, and I wanted some of the people to be on the AI committee, and it was helpful to have other people that were not on the AI committee. So we had 3 department heads from the high school, which I think was done deliberately because AI use is more acutely felt at the high school by that age span. So having leaders of teachers as to be informed by the process and also to just be stakeholders in the process, I think is important. Then we also had administrators. John was there. IT specialists were there as well. And they had us engage in a exhaustive review, I would say. It was a self-assessment, and it was helpful. At the same time, it was not helpful. It was helpful in showing us what we're doing, and then also helpful, I'd say, in feeling good that we're actually further along than we thought we were. Then what we did is we went to this was all the pre-conference work, and then actually at the conference, it was doing the work. So we all sat around a big table, and the methodology was facilitated by the presenters. Data security was a huge component as well. And then halfway through the conference, and I will say this in public meeting, we pivoted. We said, let's just do this ourselves. This is great what they want us to do, but let's do what we think is in the best interest of the students here in Westborough. We formulated our plan here based on actually our strategic plan. So it was kind of a mashup of what COSIN wanted and then what we thought would be meet the needs of kids and educators here in Westborough. So that was really the focus on day 2. And then, as I said, it was this iterative process where we brought it to the AI committee, shared, got feedback, made adjustments, brought it to the WETF. They gave us feedback as well. And this is, you know, I'd say like version 5 of this plan.
And then just one final question. I am curious, we were talking about curriculum integration, and I understand that it seems like we're largely talking about just like, different ways in that AI can essentially like assist in different, projects and assignments. I know this is likely very early, but like, is there any thought or discussion around potentially like an AI specific class around like how to actually like teach kids to use AI kind of full time?
I would say we would, excuse me, very loud. We would probably look to embed it in some of our tech offerings already, and then have units of AI. I think one thing that would be helpful is to thoughtfully and longitudinally consider what components of AI learning and tasks would be helpful for which grade spans, so that there's not redundancies and that we're not, and that it's age appropriate. I could see that being perhaps an elective as well, but there's definitely opportunities. And I think one thing I want to highlight is we also don't know what we don't know. And I want to save space here for like innovation and sandbox and play, because I think through creativity and play, that's really where teachers will find use cases that might not currently be anticipated, and also students as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sarah?
Thanks. Matt, this was great. It was extremely thorough. Your memo was very thorough, as I feel everything that you provided. So thank you very much for that. I just had a couple of more general questions. One was, you were talking about like the super AI, super intelligent AI.
Agentic AI, yeah.
So that's that they actually, it'll complete tasks for you. So in the context of students and education, could you give an example of something that you would be concerned about in that context?
So agentic AI right now can automate some workflows that I've seen to really help with efficiency. Like payroll would be a concern I would have if we wanted to automate that. I really think there needs to be a human on top of all of the key decision making that occurs. I mean, you see it if you follow the news with the events going on in the Middle East and Anthropic pulling out of the government because they wanted to assure that there was a human making a decision and not just an algorithm and an AI bot, especially when it came to warfare decisions. Obviously, the stakes are much lower here, but I would want to make sure that student learning and student privacy and then all of the workflows that we could automate in the future would be appropriately done and have human oversight.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I wasn't sure exactly where you're going with it.
Yeah, no, not really student use. Although you could see some cases of like grading and assessment and IEP writing. So that we just want to be really thoughtful about what and where and when. And also, at some point down the road, I could envision having an AI policy, but I do not think we are there yet for the next 12 to 18 months.
I was going to comment, the suggestion, you sort of just threw that out there about an AI elective, or even some sort of mandatory training that might even be able to be incorporated into, I know we don't have necessarily SEL type exactly right now. I don't know exactly what form it is at this moment, but if there's a way to incorporate it, because it falls into our social emotional health and well-being and all of that. So there may be a way to incorporate it into that mandatory stuff that we have to do. But I think the elective piece is a really good idea. And I think a lot of kids would take advantage of that opportunity if that were to be there. And then, so again, I love that you've so digging deep with the COSIN stuff and all of that. I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I'm curious, since now, I guess it's been several years, obviously, that this has been out there, and now we're really kind of past the point where it's infiltrated, it's there, they're working with it. What have you seen as far as the reception that you're having from staff and teachers about the trainings on this, and what are they seeing, like boots on the ground in the classroom? What are their biggest concerns that they are actually facing on a daily basis? I feel like this is all amazing. And I'm more curious about what the teachers and students, how we're interacting in the classroom right now.
Yeah, great point. So we surveyed educators. Actually, the survey is still open. I looked at the data, the survey response data earlier today. We broke it down into two different specific surveys for Westborough teachers to give us feedback. One was pre-K through 3, largely because we acknowledge we haven't provided direct PD on the topic. And we asked teachers to self-reflect on a 5-point scale, 5 being like, I'm super comfortable with AI, I got this, to 1 being, nope, I don't. I will say at the first K through 3, pre-K through 3, it skewed more like 2s and 3s and 1s. When you compare that data to what our 4th through 12th grade educators self-reported about AI and their use of AI and the professional development we provided this year, it tends to be more of a bell curve, skewing more towards 3s and 4s. I mean, it is a very new technology still for teachers, and especially in the educational space. I think a lot of the large language models were not designed for teaching and learning. I think they were designed for other applications. And now you're seeing, as I said earlier, some of our vendors embedding AI into the various cloud-based or software packages that we have. But that's just the data that was reflected back to us from the teachers. We also asked some questions about what do you need? And some of it is around clear expectations about plagiarism. I do want to be mindful and hopefully saving teachers time that they're not engaging in the age-old, is this cheating? Is this not cheating? Is this AI? Is this not AI? Because also from a student's perspective, if it can be damaging to relationships if you're accused of using AI and you did not. It's also it's incredibly complex, almost impossible to prove, and it's part of, I would say it's not the best use of their time. If you think about, you can easily go onto an AI model and type in a prompt of, create a 5-paragraph essay about the causes of the American Revolution, include a thesis statement supporting details, and oh, by the way, write it at an 8th grade level and include some typos there so my teacher doesn't think I'm cheating. It'll do that like that. So the capability is there, but I think what we've learned, and we heard this from the students and we heard this from the teachers as well, we had student panel, it really comes down to that relationship. If you are a teacher and you have a really good, strong, positive relationship with your student does not want to do that at all. They want to show you what they know and what they can do, because otherwise that's a violation of trust. So that's why I think, and this might build on what you said, Steve, education is well positioned because it is so relationship driven, and I can see aspects of it being heavily disrupted, but I think at its core, it's about humans and human connection.
Excellent. One last comment I was just going to make, that I appreciate that you guys have, in the guided introduction literacy, you've talked about identifying biases. I'm pretty sure the way that the systems are created, that there's a lot of, my understanding is very much driven in a certain direction, and the algorithm, however it's set, is not yet expanded to be more inclusive. So I appreciate that there's a focus on that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Jerry, any questions, comments?
I guess I'll just make a quick comment. From a student perspective, I think the new updated AI use agreements are great, since I think there's a lot more clarity now on sort of the boundaries for what is plagiarism and what isn't. And also hopeful, especially in the future, since I think we have a lot of great teachers in this district, I'm hopeful that as students move up through the grade levels, they'll be able to learn how to use AI responsibly and in a manner that, supports their education. So I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I think it's great that, I guess, we're tackling it now, since AI is going to be omnipresent for probably most of the rest of my life. So I think it's great what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Well, first of all, thank you very much for this report, to you and to the entire committee, working group working on this. We've come a long way since last year, since our attempt to craft some kind of policy statement, and this is a lot more thoughtful. I can tell a lot of work went into it, and it looks like it's a big task ahead of you. I am happy that you're also including families in this process. The last step there. I think that'll be an important part. Eventually, once we see more and more AI in the classrooms, I think that will be an important part. I'll just comment very briefly on the agentic AI. It's not super intelligence. It automates interactions with the chat. Instead of doing it one prompt at a time, you can design it to have response. Kind of loops. It's really just a marketing term. Although it is making strides in automating workflows, and I agree with you on that. The big challenge I see with AI is that it's still making progress. It's still making leaps. And to your comment, Steve, I think it's really unknown where the job market will be. In a few years. So it's really hard to predict it, and I think that's going to be a big challenge. How we're going to have to be very agile to see what skills really stick and what skills are going to be in jeopardy. I really like that you focus a lot of your work on the ethics, on safety, on wellness, because I think these are going to be important regardless of where AI goes. And I think that's really good. I have a few specific questions and then one more general. The first one is in one of the slides you used the term for the pre-K to 3, the analog preservation policy. Just want to make sure by analog you're not referring to no devices, no digital devices, just
No AI.
No AI.
Yeah.
Okay. That might be because I know we have people who were advocating for no screens in K to 3, so I want to make sure that we don't confuse them with this term.
Yeah, no generative AI.
No generative.
And
Okay.
the idea here is we don't want to offload that kind of critical developmental milestone of, language acquisition, literacy, numeracy. We want students to do the thinking.
Okay. That's what I thought. Just want to make it clear.
Thank you.
The digital literacy, I think it's a big. I think it's a big gap, and I'm hoping to see how you will implement this in the classroom. Like when will the teachers have time to introduce this? But I think I see this a lot that kids have no clear understanding of how even internet works. Let alone AI. They don't really have a good mental model for how this digital world operates, and I think we should spend time on that. So I'm happy to see that this is part of your plan. I just have one general question, I guess. Which part of this plan do you think will be the most challenging to implement, or parts?
I think the hardest part is the part that we're confronted with at the forefront, and that's plagiarism. I think there needs to be a mind shift on the behalf of our educators and also our students about, yes, this is a incredibly tempting tool that can cut corners at the cost of your own productive struggle in education. And I think teachers can see this, and it's fraught for those conversations about plagiarism and dishonesty, and it's just a new temptation that didn't exist. I mean, I can see that being problematic and not going away.
Fair enough. Any other questions, comments?
Just to follow up, I guess, when you do the calculation, say on the workforce in the United States, and 6% is 900,000 people who will lose their job because it was replaced by something. Just think of the health impact and what it takes to support, the worker and the worker's family who has no income. And then you sit and discuss this kind of thing, which is in the world where we teach people how to learn, which is what we do here. It's such a struggle. One of the things I heard on the news the other day was that a lawyer was using AI to write his presentation to the judge. The judge figured out that all his references were generated by AI. They didn't say what happened, Obviously, it wasn't good for for that particular person. And you know, it's, we talk about the internet, and the internet was logically based on, let's say, the ability to analyze data, to collect and analyze data of the same thing, so that you could corral it, you could print it out, so that the individual could look at what that person needed to get out of the data. This analyzes the data for you based on your question. So I guess I espouse Jane's point, which is, for the person who is outside of the school environment, which our environment has very specific historical base. I mean, you go all the way back to the Greeks, and we've designed a educational system for people to learn through experience, learn through others' experience, whereas it's potential that no one will learn anything. They will just generate an answer and be happy with it. So I think it's very necessary that not only do we teach from inside the school historical perspective, but we do exactly what Jane was suggesting, which is we tailor how to use it in the outside world. We have to teach how to use it in the outside world, otherwise none of us will have a job. Particularly since corporate America drives what happens, that's what we have to teach. We have to teach how to deal with corporate America, or we won't have a job. So I guess that's my piece of philosophy for this one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, we're moving on to the next item, citizens' request. Anybody here to speak? Okay. Next item will be discussion items. So the first one is the vote to ratify the contract with the Westborough Educators Association. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Is there-
Second.
Okay. All right. Is there discussion?
Can I make a comment? Just,
Sure.
and I know it's the school committee's discussion, but I would want to, first of all, thank Sarah and Steve. We had, I think, a really productive series of meetings with the Westborough Education Association. It's a very kind of professional and thoughtful group, and we have extraordinary teachers here, and I'm really pleased to have been part of the process, and I think we landed in a great place. So.
Yeah, could you briefly summarize, I guess, the points of both the union negotiations and what the outcome was?
Sure. In terms of kind of the big rocks and big changes in the contract, there was an agreement in terms of the COLA for the next 3 years. So we reached an agreement of 3% per year over the arc of the contract, so 3, 3, and 3. We made some very substantial changes to the way longevity is characterized in the contract. There was a provision in there that was a kind of a unique super longevity clause that we are phasing out in favor of a kind of more robust regular longevity clause. So that was a big provision. I think that there was a lot of discussion about time, and the prior contract had put in place an extended Wednesday clause, and we swapped that out for language that sort of characterizes some of the work that we want to make sure educators are doing, but also coupled that with flexibility for them to do that work professionally in times and places where it's appropriate. And I appreciate that. I think there was a lot of interest from the association in trusting educators to do the things that we know that they are committed to doing. So those are some of the big highlights, I'd say, in the contract. For folks who are there, is any other ones that you recall? Those are. We also extended parental leave and some parental leave language that I think was responsive to the times. That's been going around.
I guess, along the lines of that is the realistic discussions that we had about, what is our ability, if you will, the town of Westborough, to continue things as they were.
Yes.
As we discussed at town meeting, that in fact, not only did we have some reduction in staff associated with with need, as well as retirements and so on. But the realistic approach that our unions take in negotiations of, what is beneficial and what can they live with given the surrounding escalation of almost everything. And certainly in the last few years, the changes in the ability of any household to live the same way they did based on increasing everything. And I just want to point out to the town that we do negotiate in good faith, and the input, if you will, from our unions has been positive in the sense of a realistic approach to, what do they have to continue working for us, versus what they would like to get. And that's one of the reasons why it takes so long to do these things, because, there is an understanding of the fact that the well can go dry, and things then become pretty significantly negative, as you'll hear about other communities like City of Boston and others, where they're up against their levy limit. They cannot raise additional money. They can't actually complete negotiations. And in fact, staff has to be laid off. And so I just want to comment how honest our unions have been with us in multiple years of negotiation. So thank you all.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, or rather a shout out to obviously Allison, you, but also to Tammy and Anita, who I think were just phenomenal in this process, especially Tammy. I mean, instrumental in getting this all together and really helped bring, the parties together and memorialize essentially all of the terms. So I really, I have a new understanding and appreciation for the work that's done in these departments. So I just wanted to say thank you to them as well.
Anyone else? Well, I'd like to say thank you as well to Steve, Sarah, and the whole negotiating team for delivering this contract. I am participating in the custodian negotiations, and I know it's a big task, especially when you're doing this contract. Okay, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 500. Motion passes. We have two more action items. The next one is regarding the Westborough High School A and B roof project, and I'm going to move this. I moved that the school committee award the contract for replacement of the Westborough High School A and B roof sections and repair of the roof rim to Wayne Roofing Systems, LLC, as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for the base amount of $4,494,000 and alternates 1, 2, 3 for $215,518 for a total amount of $4,709,518. The award is subject to the execution of a contract in a form acceptable to council for the school committee and the owner's project manager, Vertex. Further, to approve a total construction budget of $5,732,830, which includes a contingency of $627,025 to be used for unforeseen conditions, as authorized by the owner's project manager, OPM, school committee chair and/or project liaison, and superintendent, and OPM costs of $396,286. Further, that the school committee authorizes the district to issue a letter of intent to Wayne Roofing Systems, LLC. This award is contingent upon the contractor furnishing a 100% performance bond, and a 100% labor and materials payment bond, as well as evidence of insurance in compliance with Mass General Law, Chapter 149. Reach an acceptable contract, and that no invoice can be paid prior to July 1st, 2026. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Can I have a
You have a
point? I just want to say something.
yes.
So, so this is another place where I just want to say thank you actually to some folks in town, the very meaningful conversation at town meeting. I want to thank, the townspeople who get involved and bring information to us. Everybody, this is, at least for me, a learning process. And there's things that I don't know very well because it's just not my area. So I do appreciate the participation of all of our town members in trying to ensure that everybody here is doing the absolute best they can and what is in the best interest of the town and trying to be good stewards of our budget. And I think that I just really appreciate the participation that I saw and also the conversation that was had at town meeting. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Any other comment?
Yeah, I guess the next thing we were going to talk about was a recommendation of the engineer hired to create the drawings and to evaluate the bids. That's our next step. So I think the motion you just made is premature to that, but I guess I can circumvent that by adding that after review of all the bids and associated with the terms and conditions of the contract, or the bid instructions, that Wayne Roofing was the recommended engineer's choice for award at this meeting.
Okay. Let's do the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
500. The motion passes. And one more action item, this time for the Gibbons Fieldhouse repair project. I move that the school committee award the contract to Clay Borglund Roofing at the base amount of $33,000 for replacement of the Gibbons Fieldhouse roof and associated repairs. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there a discussion?
I had a couple of questions. You want to go on?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I had a couple of questions about this. One is, what is happening as far as, my understanding is that when we went for, just town meeting for the amount that we requested, there's some interior work that's also being done. Is that part of the quote that we're proposing to go with, that they're going to be doing some interior work as well, or is it just the roofing?
They're just doing the roofing. We'll have to work out the removal of petitions. And based on discussions that I've had with others, our town staff could very well do the additional petition removals because they've done other petition removals in the past. And so the scope of work is the roof, the repair of whatever substrate material is needed. And so the base bid of $33,000 is included in the discussion and written scope of work, as well as a contingency beyond that to deal with any unknowns that they may find when they open up the roof. But lastly, $10,000 was added to pay for whatever additional services may be needed on a time and material basis to deal with petitions to make the space more usable than it is now.
Okay, so, and then, another question I have is to try and just understand, because I know that we're doing this to repair the leaks and so I guess I'm trying to understand, do we have an end game for the field house as far as what we're planning on? Is there further work that we're going to be looking to go to the town to get? I'm just trying to understand. I know right now we're just taking care of the roof piece of it.
The purpose of fixing the roof is to give a home for all the materials, storage, equipment that we have that's used for landscaping, cutting the grass, doing the snow. I mean, the photographs that you had when we had this discussion in the past shows that building is lock and stock full of school committee equipment that we use to maintain the buildings. If that building was demolished, there'd be no place to put it except to build a new one. And to replace that building in its square foot size would be over $1.5 million. And that's the reason why, at the time, that I felt it necessary to make sure that a decision to do either fix the roof or tear it down and build another space somewhere when we don't have enough money to do it, when the difference between the two was $80,000 between demolishing the building and fixing the roof. I think this is a slam dunk, and I don't understand why it's been such a problem, if you will, to end up in the position that we may by virtue of positive vote on this thing. Mr. Borglund is very familiar with that building because he went to school there, and he used the field house when he was doing sports. And that's one of the reasons why it's a beneficial outcome of the bid process that went through. So
No, yeah,
I think a little imagination here might work.
No, I just want
Let
to
me
say,
just, if I may, I just want to add. Also, I don't know if you're aware, there is a trailer adjacent to the Armstrong gym, and one of the hopes is that perhaps we can get rid of that by the virtue of using more of that building, with the repaired roof. I think there is a lot of opportunities for that, for that location, and the scope right now was to essentially save the building from further damage by repairing the roof.
right.
We can explore other uses in the future, right?
Right.
That's-
So I think that's what my question was around, because, I would think that and again, I mean, just for the record, I am going to support this, but I'm, just concerned that I thought that this was going to make this building completely usable, and we're going to be able to do whatever we intended to do, whatever the subcommittee had decided that we needed to do with the building. My concern is,
Well, I understand that,
what-
but just to interrupt.
Steve, that's right.
Well, I just want to add the point that it's used for storage, and that's what we're trying to do to make it more useful in that sense. We never discussed about any other use for the building, but certainly that is a possibility in terms of anybody's imagination on the school committee to do so. So I'm sorry if I interrupted you. I
No, that's okay.
apologize.
I just was finishing by saying, but again, I mean, I support this. We went to the town, we got the money. I just wanted to make sure that, none of us here, I think, want to go back to the town for more on certain things. So I was just trying to understand if we had a plan, but if this was the plan for the immediate future, then this was the plan. So,
I mean, if you did have, a vision, and it doesn't fit what we currently have, certainly, that vision could be expanded. We could go back to town meeting and ask for money to do that. I mean, the building is, I don't want to use the phrase that I would otherwise somewhere else, but it's a pretty hardy building. The roof joist that's there would actually allow you to put a second floor on it. And so, to the extent that that was somebody's vision to create additional space as a second story, that whole building could support it. It was designed to be tough as nails. I guess I'll use that phrase.
thank you.
Okay. Let's do the vote. All those in favor? Aye. 500. The motion passes. Thank you very much. We're moving on to the two new items in the discussion section. The first one is the class size policy, and I think Allison, you have
Sure.
something on that.
I will just pull up the draft of what I shared with you all. This is a request that comes out of collective bargaining in our conversations with the Westborough Teachers Association. They one of the agreed upon provisions was that the school committee would adopt class size guidelines. This is and sort of codify them. They have been sort of floating around informally on presentations and things in the past, but we don't have them in kind of a formal policy place. And so I looked at kind of what those informal guidelines had been, and then also did a lot of investigating around other districts. So I found sort of all the districts in the Commonwealth that do have a policy in place, looked at the language, and sort of built kind of pulled together things that I think are responsive to the concern, but that also give us some sort of thoughtful flexibility around implementation. I think the thing you want to do with class size is make sure that, the parameters are clear, but that there's also an opportunity to respond to very specific situations that come up. So just because a class tips over guideline by one student doesn't automatically trigger a new section, for example, because that may not be the best solution, and it may not even be a possible solution if you have a space shortage in a building. So I think it's important to build these a certain way. I did share this with the Westborough Educators Association president, who kind of said, looks like a great start. So I'm bringing them forward to you for kind of consideration. You know, as you see in the document, there's sort of three sections. First are sort of the class size ranges, and these are the things that we've put into presentations and talked about informally, at least as far as I know, for the past 10 years or so. It's important to note that these are ranges and that there will be fluctuation within those ranges, and also that they don't really account for all classes, that there are some specialized classes that may be either extremely small or extremely large, depending on the situation. So if you think about music ensemble classes, for example, a chorus, you don't want to constrain a chorus, you want to get a whole bunch of voices in the room and have them sing together. So it's hard to set class size guidelines around those types of programs. The same is true for some of our sort of very specialized special education programming, where we may want really small group sizes in order to facilitate student learning outcomes. And those are sort of articulated here. We have to think about student need first and foremost. What's our budget? What's our space? And what can we do safely? And how to make sure that students each get the individualized attention that we want them to have in order to kind of maximize learning. In terms of response, one of the things I mentioned before is we want to have sort of a flexible response to situations where class sizes are outside of guidelines. And so some of the possible things we could do, the goal of this policy is to say if something's outside of guidelines, it triggers investigation and conversation and some sort of solution. So, one might be we want to assign an additional ESP, and that's an educational support professional, formerly paraprofessional. I'm going to start using that term since we've adopted the new contract, to a class in order to kind of help support students in the class. We may need to relocate a specialist who's a math specialist or literacy specialist to work with a classroom on a part-time or full-time basis. We may be able to implement co-teaching if need be. We may need to split a section, and we may think a little bit about using space flexibly. I've seen this solution sometimes where a large class, there's nothing that's challenging maybe about the student population or configuration or the teacher and student ratio, but it's just space-wise an issue. We may have to relocate kiddos into a different space. So there are a lot of possible scenarios here that are included. I'm bringing this forward just for your viewing and discussion, and my hope is that before the end of this school year we would vote on something so it's sort of formal and official, so that as we go into the new contract with the start of the new contract with the teachers, that is in place per their request.
Thank you, Allison. And just to be clear for everybody, I think you already said that, but just want to emphasize, we don't have a policy like this in place, and these guidelines are not changed from what we had before. It's just they were not codified as a policy, and
Correct.
several.
It used to be.
It used to be.
Used to be a voted action of the school committee every year to create, if you will, a table of classroom sizes as a vote of the school committee every year. And that happened as a result of changing circumstances as we ran out of classroom space before Mill Pond was built, and relieved that, and we continued to grow after that. So that was the reason thereafter that the Fales construction was changed, because the building was way too small for the number of kids that were there. And so after that, we didn't have the restrictions. And so it is a policy of the school committee and has remained that, even though currently it wasn't codified until this discussion. Obviously, we saw some concerns about that in regards to the redistricting in order to more efficiently use the space we have.
I guess that was your comment.
Yeah, I guess it would be.
Jane?
I mean, these look reasonable. Are they pretty much what we do now? I know we had reduced class sizes in response to COVID, but are we back to around this?
This is sort of where we are right now. I think we have currently looking at our, I'm most familiar with K-3 because that's where we really monitor, but we've landed almost entirely in there. I think we may have one section that's below in K-3. That's it.
So this wouldn't be a big shift.
No,
Okay.
no. This is, I think, and really what the association was asking for wasn't to make change, was just to, and I think the reason that was put on the table had to do with wanting to make sure that we're always mindful of the educational learning environment and that student-teacher ratio need.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim?
Thank you. No questions.
Okay, thanks.
Sarah?
Were there any particular buildings where this was, really outside of what we had intended to do size-wise?
No, I think these, all of our buildings are kind of aligned within this now. I would say prior to redistricting and prior to last year and making some kind of staff reductions, we had class sizes that were much lower at fails in particular. So that's a situation that was kind of an equity situation. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate with the declining enrollment that these would fall on the lower side of the range or not necessarily?
No, I don't see that as the K-3 principals have kind of gone through the exercise of planning out sections for next year. Everything's looking like it's following very nicely where it needs to be. We're monitoring kindergarten enrollment right now, and so I'll have a better answer for you in about probably about a month. So maybe not the next meeting, but the meeting after, about where we stand with K. And I am very mindful of the fact that although we are experiencing a dip currently, we have development on the horizon, and that I fully anticipate that's going to have an impact across the school district. So I don't want to jump to assume that decline is going to continue until we see what happens with development.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, I don't have any questions. I would just encourage all the members of the board to review it thoroughly, and we'll continue the discussion at the next meeting. Thank you. Okay, last one in the new business is the memorandum of understanding for the operational efficiency study. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I think so. As was voted at town meeting, there is funding set aside to engage in an operational efficiency study to look at ways that the municipal and school departments might work together in order to achieve better kind of outcomes for folks and maybe save some money for the town as well. And this is a process that my understanding is there was an earlier iteration of this, but it happened with less sort of mutual agreement. And so I think there's really a concerted effort to go into this process and maintain kind of a sense that this is a partnership effort, so that, when we look at outcome, we're all kind of in it together. And one way to do that is to kind of upfront set out expectations. So the idea of a memorandum of agreement is a way of sort of setting the terms that kind of protect, each department's interests, but also set forth how this process is going to work. I think the goal is to present it to folks here for your consideration, bring it back next time after you've had some time to wrestle with it to vote. And once this is voted, then we move to the phase of writing the RFQ and moving forward with procuring the consultant to do the study. And does that summarize? I think Jakub and I were at the finance team meeting where we're at the subcommittee meeting or working group. It's a working group meeting.
Yeah, so it was reviewed by the town manager, by the superintendent, and the chairs of the select board and the school board. And the way I look at this document is this is kind of a learning from the past, because back in 2010, I believe, there was a similar study done, but it was driven by the town side and the school side was not engaged formally early on in the process and eventually didn't really succeed. And so the hope here is to establish partnership and have clear expectations of how this process is going to work. This, by us voting to support this agreement, we're not making any commitment to implementing anything. This is just a understanding between the two sides of the street and how we're going to go about finding the consulting party and how we're going to pursue the whole process. So well, I can open up for discussion. Steve, if you have any comments, questions?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things that the town should know is that the agreement includes the fact that it's an opportunity to look for savings, or if you will, cooperation, which ultimately should work to provide savings. But it's also clearly stated that it's not to contravene the responsibilities, the legal responsibilities of the Board of Selectmen in managing the town, or for that matter, the rights and responsibilities of the school committee. Because I think all of us can see that there are unique responsibilities for each side to perform. However, as was mentioned in this discussion, was that there was an attempt to do that, but without those caveats in 2010. And I think the drivers that might have caused it were not as explicit as what we have in this agreement. So I think when it came up earlier, I can't remember, it was the budget summit, I think. I'm in agreement to look for any way that we can properly do our jobs and save money at the same time. I think there are limited ways that may work here. But given the fact that it does take, let's say, an overview or outside review of things that we do, that many things may be put in front of both the school committee and the Board of Selectmen that might work. So why not do it? The town's voted to do it, so I'm certainly in favor of it.
That's great. Thank you. Jane?
No comments.
Tim?
No comments.
Sarah?
So I just want to say I'm very excited about this. I'm hoping that we get something, some information from this that's really going to help us in, making, a positive outcome for both the town. And I think there's room for that. I think on both sides, there's always going to be something that can be improved. And if it can be cost effective for the town, then there's nothing better than that. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes out of this study and what, we are able to learn. And I think that even though there was, and I did see the study that was done about 10 years ago, you said, and
2010.
was it 10 years ago, 2010? Oh,
Yeah.
so longer. I think it would have been time to do it again anyways. So much has changed.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to what we learned from this.
Thank you. Jerry?
No comments.
Okay. Thank you. So, well, I'm open to, so let me just add one more piece of information. So the hope is to hire the consultant before summer begins. And so we are a little bit under time pressure. It's okay. We vote next meeting. But if there is willing, there's will to vote today. We can do it today as well.
I would think we could do it today. It has all of our signatures. Only 3 are required, of course, but I think it's important that if we're all in agreement that we sign the signature sheet for it, so that in fact our side is clear that we're supporting the effort. And obviously we reserve, discussion rights, if you will, and the logical outcome by discussion at the end of this thing. But having said that, the sooner the better, I think.
I think that's excellent. Any other comment before we do the vote?
Should I make a motion?
Please.
Okay, motion to approve the, what's it called? Memorandum of,
Efficiency study.
memorandum of agreement for the efficiency study.
Is there a second? Okay. I guess we had discussion. So all those in favor?
Aye.
500. Thank you very much.
I'll get an updated draft that doesn't say draft, and
Yeah.
I know this has to go before the select board as well. So if both parties agree, then we'll get it all signed and get moving. I do want to say, as we looked at this as a group, I think there will be things that we learn that may impact our planning for FY28. It may have greater impact, though, looking beyond that, just in terms of the timeline. When we looked at another comparable district that engaged in this, it was sort of an 8-month kind of timeline process. So we may miss the window for extensive input into FY28, but we'll see. I appreciate the early vote because that sets it up so that it's possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. School committee reports, and how about we start with Jerry?
Do you have a couple things? I'm not sure if Superintendent Borchers mentioned this already, but kindergarten registration for the 2026-2027 school year is now open. So more information can be found, I believe, on Parent Square. Next item is that Armstrong Elementary School is organizing a clothing drive until this Friday in collaboration with Cradles to Crayons and Project 351. And for those who don't know, this is an annual tradition in the Westborough community where families donate new or gently used clothing, shoes, school supplies, children's books, and toys, among other items, to low-income and homeless children in Massachusetts. So it's a great initiative, and I strongly recommend that you guys, that families donate if they are able to. Next, the Fails Parent Group is holding a fun run fundraiser until April 17th, and donations can be made to the classroom, students, or through a general donation. All funds will be used to support enrichment programs, social events, and other events organized by the Fails Parent Group. And additionally, all three elementary schools, so Fails, Armstrong, and Hastings, are going to be holding a family music night on Tuesday, April 14th from 6:30 to 7 p.m. on Zoom. And the Gibbons Middle School Theater program is performing a show called The Music Man Jr. by Meredith Wilson this Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. and on Saturday at 12:30 p.m. and 4 p.m. And tickets can be bought, I believe, on Parent Square. There's a QR code where you can buy tickets, and I'm not sure if you can buy them at the door. So then lastly, at the high school, the Project Graduation 2026 fundraising committee is looking for parent donations to help support Project Graduation, which is an annual Westborough High School tradition for graduating seniors following their commencement, where they go to Teamworks for a night of activities, food, just to keep them safe and off the streets. And since the event is entirely funded by donations from parents and local businesses, the committee is looking for families to make donations, which can be made either online, by check, or through Venmo. And more information can be found on the Project Graduation website. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Sarah?
Nothing to report.
Tim?
Nothing to report tonight.
Jane?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Steve?
A couple of things. Just to point out that our discussion on the A and B roofs was a letter of intent to enter into a contract. The contract has to be signed by the school committee. Again, there should be all 5-member signature lines. And to that end, I guess if you do some simple math, you'd realize that this particular project is approximately 4% of the town's budget this year. To that end, bring to the attention of the school committee that we had an oversight committee relative to the Hastings roof, and to the extent that this is a larger project than that, I would like to bring to the table at our next meeting a discussion on how we manage it from the responsibility of oversight by the school committee, which is parallel to what Sarah brought up earlier. And in this time, it would actually be a subcommittee of the school committee, which has very specific requirements for transparency and opportunity for the general public to at least be able to watch discussions that we have in terms of presentations relative to the, let's say, invoices to be paid, scope of work that we're paying for, et cetera, so that in fact anything that subcommittee would do would be consistent with the requirements of a subcommittee or the school committee, which is to hold open hearings, meetings. I assume they could be Zoomed so that anybody could watch them, and also to make sure that there is due process on all things, including approval of change orders. And the reason why I say that is we have a fair amount of contingency. It's only there for changes in scope that are necessary. It's not there to spend on something else. And so that's my particular reason for bringing this up. And so I'd like to see an item on the agenda for our next meeting to just discuss, I guess, the merits of what was suggested in the memo that we voted tonight, or whether some other format of that oversight committee can be discussed and put in place. I also point out that the schedule for this is supposed to start the day after school in terms of the real work, if you will, on the site, and supposed to finish the day before school starts, which means we're roughly in the order of 80 days. And so this committee is going to have its hands full to keep track of what's going on over that 80-day period. And again, I think it's important because a lot of things can happen, and they can happen in this case very quickly. So anyway, I'd like to discuss that and see where we come out in this discussion. The last time around, which was structured slightly different, if I recall, Tim and I were part of the Hastings Oversight Committee. And again, that came in on budget and on time, which of course is what I suggested at town meeting. I've never been on the school committee where we did not come in on budget. Unfortunately, Fields did not come in on time because of the problems we had with the geothermal system. So that's my report.
Thank you, and I will definitely support this. The next meeting will be a good opportunity to review all our subcommittees and appointments as well. So that'll be a perfect timing to have the discussion. From myself, I just want to add, I was my first time at the finance team. I joined with Allison. It's a monthly meeting, joined by the select board chair and the town employees, and this meeting was pretty much a reflection of the past budget season, and the overall impression that I got was that everybody in the room agreed with the right timing of the budget summits, especially the September one, which gave clear directions for both departments where to go with the budget process, and it turned out to be pretty peaceful, successful season as opposed to the previous one. So it looks like we're going to continue that process in the next year. Okay, so we're now moving on to the consent agenda. This is a new item. We haven't had that before, and this is something that's modeled after many other towns in Massachusetts, and allows us to combine items that we usually don't discuss into one motion. It's still open for discussion if there's interest in that, but allows us to be more efficient. So do I have a motion for the approval of minutes?
I move the minutes of March 11th and March 21st of 2026 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there a discussion? No, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 500. The motion passes. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, Westborough TV.